So you think the migrant crisis is bad in, say, the US or other European countries? Well, I took a look at Italy, and my goodness, is it horrifying. I wanted to talk about the actual nature of what they're having to put up with, because I don't think we focused on Italy that much recently, as well as what they've been trying to do, because they're one of the countries that is actually trying to do something about it, because they have Giorgia Meloni at the front, who is still letting in lots of migrants, but is at least trying to appear to be doing something. And I'm going to horrify you, and some of these stories are quite horrible, so if you do have young children around, I would advise perhaps turning this off and coming back to it another time, or getting them out of the room or whatever. I'm going to try and keep it as sanitary as possible, though. But here's something from Remix. I've cited them quite a lot in this article because they do some great stuff. So 11,141 Italian women have been, and I can't say that word on YouTube, sexually assaulted by foreigners since 2018. And that means that between 2018 and 2023, when the figures were gathered, that is 5 cases a day.
Jesus. All right.
Which, when you put it like that, just like, well, we're going to let these people in, don't you think, think of their poor humanitarian needs.
Yeah, think of their human rights, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but then when you counter it with 5 women a day, actually, no, I care more about those 5 women in my country than some person that's broke into my country trying to get...
Some chancer.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
Chancers. That's what they are.
Mm-hmm. And then Giorgia Meloni came out and shared some of these statistics, which I do support. She said, last year in Italy, there were 5,832 sexual assaults on women. Of these, 2,524 were committed by foreign nationals. So that's
crazy. Isn't that more than 10 a day?
Yes. It's over half. So the problem's getting even worse than 5 a day.
It's like nearly 20 a day.
Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous, isn't it? And then a total 43.3% of the crimes were committed by a representative 8% of the disproportionate.
Oh, yeah.
No, so, Josh, that is a right-wing
talking
point. Yeah, it's a right-wing conspiracy that disproportionately per capita.
Yes, everyone commits crimes equally. Everyone has their time to murder. They just don't know it yet.
Yes.
It's not that morality exists or anything. And then there was this as well. A Pakistani migrant sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl at a bus stop, and thankfully she managed to eventually get away and call for help. And he did get caught, so I suppose that's a good thing. Yeah. But she was just waiting at a bus stop, and this 40-year-old man attacked her, basically.
It's becoming harder and harder to let your kids out of the house.
It is, yeah. Well, it's one of those things that's massively changed over the past 50, 60 years, in Britain at least, is that people's willingness to let their children go and play outside, or, a trust in the local community.
Door open.
Yeah, well, I grew up doing that, and I know I lived in South Devon, so it's basically, utopia, but still.
But it was like that all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Britain was a safe place. England was a safe place. Everyone knew it, and no one thought about it. And then something changed in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the population thing is important in sheer numbers, because part of the security you had was that everyone knew each other in the local area. And so if you saw someone going into someone's house and you're like, you don't normally go there, you don't visit them, or you're not a familiar face around here, you can almost guarantee that something's going on. And so you call the local Bobby, who's only 2 streets away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that worked, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it is worth pointing out as well.
It depends what you mean by worked. It created a nice, wholesome, pleasant, safe, productive society.
That works for me.
Yeah, but that might not be the goal.
That's true.
It doesn't work for the Pakistani grooming gangs.
It is worth mentioning as well. I've been looking at historic population growth throughout history, and actually large sudden population growth presages conflict in many cases. And so,
glad we've finally got a study to prove that.
I know that the data has proved what a reading of history.
But isn't it interesting that a war will then break out and cull off much of the population?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a weird autoimmune reaction built into our
our
psyches.
There are lots of different behaviours that, when population density gets too high, human behaviour changes and becomes less pro-social.
If you become anonymous within your own community, within your own street, it feels like a cloak. You can go around and do whatever you want and no one's going to pay second attention. You can get away with stuff in broad daylight because...
Well, there are lots of aspects of just urban density that lead to more crime. And I don't think it's desirable to live in a city, really. it's just an economic zone that you go to, raid the income, and leave to a nicer place. And I don't think that's healthy or good for anyone in the long run.
Well, cities used to be cheap, right? Because they were the areas of prosperity. You'd go there with barely any money, be able to get a really cheap room, and just work until you could earn enough money to start a family, have a home, all of that kind of stuff.
Afford to retire in the countryside.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's you have to sell your soul just to live in the cities now.
So there was also this. This was a tourist from South America, which I imagine she probably presumed, okay, I'm going to Europe. I'll finally be safe now. And what happened was she was asking for directions or something like that, I think. And then a man of Arab appearance, apparently, approached her and offered assistance. Oh, she was looking for an ATM. And then there was a young boy around 18, if there's anything she needed. And then he led her supposedly to an ATM. Actually, it was an abandoned building where she got ambushed by a bunch of North Africans.
Oh, God.
And so...
Why are these people here?
Yes. And
you ask that every week, but there is no answer yet.
I know.
And then even in the asylum centres themselves, this was a Bangladeshi migrant sexually assaulted and got pregnant a 10-year-old child in the asylum centre in Italy.
I just can't believe the kind of horrors we are presiding over.
This just didn't happen.
Yeah, this just... I when I was young, I'd never heard of anything like this.
Well, I think that you look at the case of, say, Joseph Fritzl. Everyone in all of Europe knows who he is, roughly.
Yeah.
And that's a regular Tuesday afternoon in Pakistan. So it's the cultural divide is absolutely massive.
But this is the thing. It's not that these things never happened in Europe. It's that they very rarely happened. And when they did, because they were so rare, the news spread everywhere. And these people became infamous. And so even if they managed to get out of prison after 30 years... they basically couldn't live here because everyone would know who they are. Everyone would continue to punish them until they died.
I think for many of these crimes, they shouldn't be able to live full stop.
No.
I mean, I think that...
Oh, anyone who murders someone, definitely. Like,
I would say sexual assault as well, when it's cases like this.
In these sort of contexts, sure.
So this one is horrific. So an Iraqi man who was an asylum seeker watched his wife and child die, and to take out his frustration, he sexually assaulted and murdered a teen whilst the ship was sinking. So it was like the final thing he did before coming to Italy.
That's just such a remarkable commitment to the crime.
It's like the most evil you could condense into a short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, if
I'm dying, let's do this.
If I was on a sinking ship, I think I'd have much different priorities.
Like trying to preserve your wife and child?
Yeah, also, you're watching your child and wife die.
He raped and choked her to death in front of her mother to vent his frustration. Okay, so, man, we don't understand these people. That's all I'm saying.
We certainly don't need them in Europe, that's for sure.
But that's the thing, we don't need to understand them. We spent too long trying to understand them and rationalise the things that they do. And we can't. We actually can't. It's too...
you do not understand this person's worldview at all.
No, it's the whole psychology of it, the philosophy of it is too foreign to us. And so we should stop trying to understand and just support them.
Yeah.
And there was another case here where unions actually called a strike because a train conductor was stabbed by a North African migrant. I'm not going to scroll down and show the picture, but it's got to the point whereby you can't actually do your profession and you have to go to the unions, and the Italians and the unions, if you know your history, there's some interesting things going on there. But the fact that it gets to this point, right? Yeah. Is...
I'm surprised it hasn't happened in the UK already, given that we've seen so many train stabbings or station stabbings. People jump in the gate. If one if one person on the gate actually says, no, you need to buy a ticket, well, they could just whip out a zombie knife and stab him in the neck. You don't know.
So, almost for it all now. There's another video here. I'm not going to play this video because it's horrible, so don't play it, Samson. Of a migrant beating an elderly man and a disabled woman in a wheelchair, seemingly for no reason, just because he felt like it in Italy. And this is what is going on there. But
man, Italy really has some problems.
It does, but it does seem like there are people in Italy that have their head screwed on properly and are talking about these things. Like their deputy prime minister, Matteo Salvini, accused Keir Starmer of persecuting citizens who oppose legal immigration and defend family values. And he says, will blocking illegal immigration, defending the family and fighting Islamic fanaticism be considered illegal thoughts to be punished, he asked.
Well, the answer to that would be yes.
Yes, he's right.
Yeah.
But it's good to hear as well that he's trying to...
Yeah, good for Salvini.
Yeah, good for him being in government, having those opinions, and thank you for putting pressure on Keir Starmer as well. So it does seem like there are people. There's another one here that I saw recently. This is a sociologist, which I had to pinch myself, one of the most left-wing of the so-called sciences. He issued a warning of civil unrest in Italian suburbs linked to illegal immigration. And he basically said, if you want to solve this without violence, you need to remigrate people.
Yeah, well, I mean,
masse.
why are there like millions of North Africans milling around Italy, assaulting the population?
Mm-hmm. It's not something that the native Italians should have to put up with.
No, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's been said on this channel 1,000 times, but they need to stop conceding ground with illegal immigration.
Yeah, it just needs to be immigration.
Yep, immigration more generally. I think...
particularly when all these people just get given free passes.
Yeah. Well, the difference between an illegal immigrant and a legal migrant with the standards in much of Europe isn't that much, to be honest. And so I wanted to talk about Albanians now.
Oh, good.
Because if anyone is
got a problem with Albanians as well.
Who hasn't got a problem?
Well,
Albania is the only place without Albanian problems.
That's true. I was saying before the podcast, actually, that if you look at a map of crimes committed by foreign nationals, most of Europe lights up red except Albania. It's
very interesting.
It's a massive condemnation. I'm just like, why is Albania like this? They just must have really good police. No, it's that all their criminals have left.
Place in Europe because all of the Albanian criminals are elsewhere. Yeah.
But I did a bit of number crunching myself using a bunch of government sources here, and they are 0.05% of the UK population. They make up 1.6% of all prisoners, which makes them 32 times overrepresented. They're the largest foreign prison population at 14%. The average prisoner, by the way, costs the taxpayer £51,724. And the most frustrating thing is, as of March 2023, prisoners who agreed to deportation had their jail term reduced and received a payment of £1,500.
So I don't really understand. Agree to deportation.
Mm-hmm.
No, what? No, deportation is against their will, whether they like it or not. Why do they have to agree with it?
We shouldn't have to pay them.
We will physically remove them. Should be the thought.
Also, if they go back to Albania and say, "Oh, did you have a nice time?" Yeah, well, I got paid £1,500 after being caught committing crime. They must think we've got money to throw away.
Oh, good, it's the Danegeld then.
Mm-hmm. And then in 2022, there were 28% of illegal immigrants, with 27% of their asylum applications being granted.
Asylum from what? Well, I'm from Albania.
Well, there are no criminals there, are there? Because
exactly.
they've all left.
It's the safest place in the world. But like, there's no war. There's no it shouldn't be possible to be an asylum seeker from Albania.
But I think that they have quite a strong hand in the illegal immigration trade in Europe.
Yeah, no kidding.
And actually, a lot of the people arrested and caught are Albanians.
No kidding.
The Wergeld analogy was good. That's exactly what's going on. Is we're just trying to pay the problem to go away, and it's not going to.
No, it didn't work for Ethelred the Unready. It's not going to work for us.
So let's have a look at how the Italians have been dealing with these dinghy enthusiasts. So in February of 2024, Italy finalised a deal with Albania to transfer 36,000 asylum seekers to detention centres in Albania. Many of these, of course, being Albanians themselves.
Yeah.
And they estimated the cost to be €650 million for the first 5 years of the agreement, which would continue, which is a lot of money to be paying.
Not as much as we're spending on illegals, but whatever.
I know, but the Italians have less money to play with as well.
Sure, but we're spending $3 billion every year.
That's true.
Just look at the IRC ruling that to send Albanians and others back to Albania is both costly, cruel, and counterproductive.
Cruel?
Yeah, cruel. Right.
It's cruel to keep Albanians in Albania. Okay.
And so then to inflict them upon the population of Europe is nice, but counterproductive to what?
Wow, that's the question, isn't it?
Their ideology is obviously very left-wing, right? It's like, oh, they're
Yeah.
human
But
rights.
the thing is
how
that they
terrible.
won't be preserved forever. Eventually, it will come to their streets. It will come to their doors. You know, we've seen it with a couple of MPs that have been attacked or sexually assaulted, and suddenly they become. You know, we've seen it with some celebrities in Hollywood. Suddenly they become really conservative because the effect of their policies finally actually reaches them. So I don't. Sure, it serves their ideology, but for how long? It's going to catch up to them, and is it just that they don't believe that it will, or think that they'll be gone by then? I just can't understand the.
I think we should just leave the chat to guess at what the aim of this is and why it's counterproductive to send and cruel to send them back to Albania.
They can fill in the blanks, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
Nothing to do with a migration that is very big.
So here is Politico reporting that 12 migrants sent to Albania for processing are returned to Italy. So what was happening was that lots of them were being returned.
12
again.
Albanians got sent to Albania, and the Albanians are like, no, thank you. No, that's not how it works.
So the immigration unit of Rome's court, which I can't believe they have an immigration unit at all,
Well, I mean, it seems like we need one.
decided
we might.
Yeah.
We should do that.
decided on Friday that migrants sent to Albania by Italy cannot be detained. However, they cannot be released in Albania either. Therefore, they will be vetted for asylum eligibility in Italy or potentially sent back to their countries of origin. So it's, again, the justice system sticking their nose in
So is
against
it
the
not
democratic
just
will.
Albanians being sent to Albania?
No.
To be honest with you, I'm for it. This is what you get.
hmm I think we should
It's some
send...
North Africans.
We should send all sorts of people to Albania. It doesn't matter if they're Albanian. You're doing it to us.
I might do it to the French too.
Yeah,
You're
why
you're
not?
letting them cross? No, not our problem now.
I mean,
Honestly.
Thing is, if all peoples and cultures and civilizations are equal, why is Albania a bad place?
mhm.
You know,
So-
obviously it's going to be
It's crime free.
and obviously it's going to be an ethnic enclave. So surely the more indigenous people, the more wholesome and rich it is. So what's wrong with Albania?
They don't sell bacon. That's one thing. That is against my human rights.
Yeah, I gotta have a bacon sarnie in the morning.
But it's also worth mentioning as well, Elon Musk picked up on this much later because Ian Miles Chong, again, reheating old news. But he said, this is
But
unacceptable.
It's good that he got this to Musk.
This is unacceptable. Do the people of Italy live in a democracy, or does an unelected autocracy make the decisions?
Well, the answer is the second.
And the unelected autocracy took exception to this. Italy's president scolds Elon Musk over comments regarding country's court rulings. So this was Sergio Mattarella, the president of Italy since 2015, who is affiliated with the Democratic Party.
Oh, yeah.
And as with the US, they are left-wing.
Yeah.
And basically he said, Italy is a great democratic country, and I must reiterate with the words used on another occasion, that it is known how to take care of itself while respecting its constitution. Anyone, particularly if, as announced, they are about to assume an important government role in a friendly and allied country, must respect its sovereignty and cannot assume the task of giving it prescriptions.
Right, so 5,000 rapes a year is the goal?
Apparently.
A part of the new normal?
hmm
This is Italy working as intended, is it?
Yeah, he's just failing to recognise the nature of the problem and instead criticising Elon Musk's conduct, which is a very good deflection tactic, but is wearing a little bit thin these days, and I don't think works nearly as well as it used to.
I mean, we do need to get Musk on side re-immigration. He seems to,
Yeah.
Mhm.
he just seems to think that all legal migration is bringing in people who are exactly like him,
Yeah.
which just is not the case.
hmm It's one of the foundational myths of America, though, isn't it? And I think he's quite wedded to the idea that...
Yeah.
But I mean, from his perspective, sure, a lot of really high-skilled, competent people move to like Silicon Valley or Texas or whatever, and he's surrounded by all these brilliant immigrants. Yeah, okay, great. But that's not the majority story.
Well, and the thing is like he knows this because he's born in South Africa and was raised there. So he knows that within that European paradigm of multiculturalism, it doesn't work because everyone began in their own ethnic enclave. America's foundational story is the mixture of people, the melting pot. And so it works there to a degree in a way that it just can't in Europe.
But
and
it is
he
also
doesn't
worth
see
pointing out that you look at boroughs in New York, there were ethnic enclaves. Like
No, exactly.
you had lots of different areas that were identified very strongly with.
Well, I
certain
mean,
ethnicities.
outside the cities, it's not.
Mm.
It's still an ethnic enclave, really.
Yeah. But the point is, America has a kind of foundational myth and a proposition behind it that makes sense to a new person who's arrived. There's a set of rules. You have constitutional rights, but everyone else has constitutional rights, so just do as you're supposed to. And fair enough, okay, you get like New York ethnic enclaves, but less trouble than you're getting in, say, Italy that doesn't have that story.
I think my pedantry is basically focused on the fact that the binding mythos was never true to begin with, and it's always been that way. And so they adopted a decree to overrule the court objections and decided to try and deport some more people, except they sent these 8 migrants to Albania, and they hadn't processed the first group, and then, one of them got sent back again, even though it was only 8.
7 down, guys.
So I'm going to read a little bit about this. It says, one of the 8 migrants brought for processing in an Albanian centre after being intercepted in international waters has returned to Italy after being deemed vulnerable. A delegation of Italian activists and lawmakers, here are the people responsible, visiting the centre said on Saturday, the Egyptian man was diagnosed with psychiatric problems, which is why he should come to Italy.
Why we want him here.
Which made it impossible for him to remain at the reception centre. That's an interesting name for it. Prison camp's better. One of the activists said, currently only 7 migrants, 5 from Bangladesh, 2 from Egypt, both countries, well, Bangladesh not so much anymore, but both countries that are supposedly safe, depending on what religion you belong to, remain at the centre. And it's got so bad that they've paid all this money to get this deal going, and as of pretty much 2 days ago, they began withdrawing staff from the offshore detention centre because they just weren't doing anything, because they didn't have enough people to process and deal with.
Right.
That they're just like, well, this is
where
going
our
anywhere.
illegals would come if we had some. Right.
And so even with illegal migration, they do have the political means to push it through, but they're just constantly getting these hurdles thrown up by these left-wing activists.
Yeah.
And it's going to be back and forth until the problem isn't solved. And even though they're trying to do something about it, it does seem like it's going to be a lot of hard work. And I know that's a very depressing note to end on, but I think that we've got to realistically highlight how much of a difficult process this will be, because there will be people putting up roadblocks all along the way.
Yeah, lefty lawyers.
It is. It's the human rights lawyers, the Keir Starmers of the world, people like that, NGOs.
Well, Keir Starmer's probably like, well, look, have any of them murdered a child yet? Let me know when they have. I'll get involved.
Well, this is the thing. He's almost primarily responsible for how the ECHR run immigration, particularly with regards to Africa, because obviously he's been a campaigner free of charge for getting the death penalty overturned in Africa, but also all the things like hotel provisions, food, all of that the state are paying for is downstream of Keir Starmer's academic legal work. He's I mean, that case that everyone was saying, oh, this is him representing Axel Rudikabana's father. And it wasn't. It was a woman from Rwanda who was 42. But that whole 6 people making claims, the actual case was for conditions, and they were making the case that they were living in destitution in the UK because they'd just turned up and had nowhere to go, and therefore it was the state's responsibility to cover their human rights. That's what Keir Starmer argued, and that then got turned into the ECHR laws that we currently have. So it's entirely his fault, our current hotel situation.
Absolutely. And so, yes, I wanted to give a bit of an update, show people where we're at, and it's not that good, at least for Italy. I hope you appreciate that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can always follow our series Lads Hour, this one about fixing every country. It's a good bit of fun. If you want to see all the other things we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.